Hello everyone, and welcome back to Make Your Mind. This is another one of my viewer request videos. So I'm just putting this pedestal right here. The sculpture that I just made is going to be sitting on this, but I had a viewer request this to do it on my channel, and I have to say, it's fairly relevant, considering the fact that I'm doing sea monsters, and I'm also doing a lot of larger creatures, and this is one of the oldest stories around, and this story has a lot of cultural significance, especially in this day and age. This video, or excuse me, the movie and the book that inspired it, inspired many other things which I will be talking about in this video. But let us begin, shall we? The year is 1955. An upstart to the movie industry, or at least into the live-action movie industry, wanted to make a movie based on a book that he thought would be fantastical and would be remarkable and be a culture and become an icon of the culture that is today. And in truth, it is. That man was Walt Disney. And with a just now starting Walt Disney Studios, he decided to get into the live-action scene with the movie 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And here is the sculpture based on that. The Nautilus. The submarine that was actually in the movie. Now, to give you some backstory, if you don't know the story of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, here's a little details for you. In 1868, rumors of a sea monster attacking ships in the Pacific Ocean had created apprehension and fear among sailors. Disrupting shipping lanes, the U.S. government invites Professor Pierre M. Aronnax and his assistant, Conseil, to join an expedition to prove or disprove the monster's existence. On board the armed frigate on board the frigate with them is the cocky master harpooner Ned Land. After months of searching, the monster is spotted and another merchant ship nearby explodes and sinks. After the warship fires its heavy cannons, the monster turns and attacks the frigate, crippling it. Ned and Aronnax are thrown overboard, as is the lifeboat, and Conseil jumps in after Aronnax and Ned to save him. Now helpless, the frigate drifts silently and no one aboard answers when the overboard passengers cry out for help. The three drift into the ocean, eventually coming upon a strange-looking metal vessel. They realize the monster itself is actually a man-made submerged boat that appears deserted. Inside, they find a large viewing port amidships and watch a strange underwater funeral procession. Now that's the beginning, basically, of the synopsis of the movie. The Nautilus was inspired and created and piloted by one Captain Nemo, who was actually a bit of a vengeful soul. He had been wronged by many people in his past, especially when it comes to maritime affairs. And essentially, he created the Nautilus in order to disrupt and dispute with his enemies in his sort of spirit of vengeance style of way. But in the process of the stowaways, or I guess the castaways, I guess you could call them, which was the three people aboard the American frigate. They then board the Nautilus and then join Captain Nemo on his adventures. And the movie, my goodness, the budget of the movie for Walt Disney Studios was about $9 million, which is not even the amount that it costs to advertise a new movie nowadays. And remember, this is back in 1955, so this was a whole new frontier when it came to live-action production, when it came to set design, movie design itself, and also practical effects, which was a huge thing back in those days. Walt Disney took a serious gamble when it came to practical effects and when it came to getting into the live-action business. He wanted to get in and he wanted to make a big statement with this movie. And he did. And thankfully, that statement basically helped to create the success that the Disney Corporation is today. Now, it is debatable whether or not Disney is more successful now than it was then, but if it wasn't for 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, we wouldn't have Walt Disney Studios. We wouldn't have Walt Disneyland. We wouldn't have Walt Disney World. And with that, we wouldn't have things today like the MCU. So the movie and the book that inspired it is of incredible cultural significance, and it truly shaped what we perceive as popular and successful today. But one of my favorite scenes, and I would say that this is probably everyone's favorite scene, is the end of the movie, which, if you haven't seen it, the movie came out in 1955. Spoilers usually last about 6 months, so if you haven't seen it, too bad. Go see the movie. Read the book. I plan on getting a copy of the book just to have in my own library. But one of the last scenes in the movie is when they get chased down in the depths by a creature, a massive creature that had never been seen before up until that point, and only had been rumored as a legend when it comes to maritime affairs and when it comes to the tales of the sea. And that monster was this. The giant squid. The end of the movie is supposed to take, or the end of the book anyway, takes place actually at sunset when this creature actually attacks the submarine. The submarine has to surface, and then they have to harpoon off a massive giant squid that basically hangs on to the side of the boat. Just like this. Let me go ahead and set this up real quick. So imagine this thing coming up from the depths. Now, by the way, for those who are curious, the term 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea was more or less for shock and amazement, because in reality, the ocean is only maybe about 8 to 10 leagues deep. Because 20,000 leagues is actually twice the circumference of the Earth, so that's actually just to give you some context as far as what this creature, or what the movie actually entails. And there's also another interesting thing. When Walt Disney World first opened, with the success of this film, they actually created a 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea ride, where you actually got to ride on board a small version of the Nautilus, underwater. And they actually had animatronics and robots that would work under the water and give you the different scenes of the movie, of the fantastical creatures that they saw. Now, if you have submechanophobia, don't look that up. So, don't worry about it. I will save you the horrifying nightmare. Which that is such an interesting fear, by the way, is submechanophobia. But that's a whole nother video I could do. But I'll leave content creators like Zeark to actually make the submechanophobia videos for sure. I'll leave a link to his channel down in the description below. He's actually a very interesting channel. He does Let's Plays and what have you. But yeah, that ending sequence in the movie. In the movie, anyway, actually took place during a storm that was actually on the high seas, and there's a scene where they have to harpoon the giant squid off of the ship, and man, it's an incredible scene. And the practical effects, everything was shot in camera. This was way before computer graphics, and this was at a time when practical effects, they were even in its infancy. They didn't do any stop motion, they didn't do anything like that. It was one giant squid that was built in camera for real, which I'm a big practical effects guy. I love practical effects. And so, there you have it. There's a little, sorry, the giant squid is actually so heavy, it's actually knocking part of the Nautilus over. But that just gives you a little bit of an idea of just the absolute significance and the incredible story that not only the book, but also the movie that it was inspired from was created. And it was Walt Disney's very first attempt at doing a live-action film, and it's still even a good movie to this day. And in fact, one of the interesting things is that not 5 years later, with the combination of the US government and a couple of scientists, they created a submarine called the Trieste that was in fact inspired by the Nautilus, and they actually went down to the bottom of the Mariana Trench, down to Challenger Deep, which is 7 miles beneath the surface of the ocean, which is a truly mind-blowing depth. And in fact, it's pretty crazy to think in 1960, and that depth wasn't surpassed until much, much later with James Cameron who actually took a submersible down to Challenger Deep and actually got to see the bottom of the Mariana Trench himself, and they actually found that there are creatures living down even 7 miles. I mean, there's no giant squids, but from what we know, there's no giant squids down there from what we've seen, but there could be. And they found some flatfish and some small crustaceans that were living 7 miles down below. And of course, one of the big things that I talk about on my channel is abyssal gigantism, which the giant squid, normally squids, they average in length between, a foot to even, 7 feet long, but the giant squid, that thing can be up to 60 feet long. And it lives in those deep depths, and that's one of the creatures that I'm so fascinated by abyssal gigantism. It's just one of the coolest things, is that as the deeper it goes, the creatures have to become bigger in order to survive in those incredible environments. But with that, that's a little commentary, a little information, and a little synopsis on 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, which I have to admit, I have become a fan once again of the movie, and also of the book itself. I do plan to get a copy of the book. It's a great story. And with that concludes the end of the video. If you enjoy videos like this, don't forget to leave a like down below, and remember to subscribe, and hit that bell for notifications, so you don't miss the next video. This was a viewer request, by the way, so if you want to leave a request, leave a comment down below. I will add it to the list. I have many requests that I'll be getting to over the course of the next couple of weeks. So with that, thank you all so much for watching this video, and I will see all of you on the next viewer-requested sculpture showcase.